Apex Online Racing is sponsored by Elgato, who created this lovely Stream Deck. For more information about the Stream Deck, the link is in the description below.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the AOR official GT3 League PC Tier 1 on Project Cars 2. We are still in Season 12 and we are getting very close to the end of the season, with this being round 9 out of 10 for this tier. It's going to be an exciting race here at Circuit of the Americas for this week. A very challenging and potentially a good track for overtaking for these GT3 cars. I'm Fisi and I will be bringing you the action today, along with, as per usual, the man himself, Yorkie065. Who seems to be speechless at the prospect of being here.
There we go. Sorry, I completely lost your voice there for a moment. I'm in the commentary box. I'm just, choosing to ignore Fizzy for a moment there. But
fair enough.
Yep, we have round 9, Circuit of the Americas. This shall be a fun and interesting race. I imagine, unfortunately, numbers seem to be a little bit low in comparison to previous rounds, but still, a lot of the top drivers that we have here week in, week out are still here. So hopefully they can provide us with some good racing action like they did last week at Daytona.
Indeed, yeah. As you said, lower numbers than usual here today. We've got 17 drivers in the session at the moment. We are still hoping that, I believe we're still hoping that Cryptic and Murph might make it before the end of the qualifying session. They're running late, and yeah, quite a few other drivers having various reasons for having to miss this week. But luckily we have got our main championship protagonists present today. Dalking is here, Operator's here, Jadier is here, and yeah, so it's of course it could be the race where we crown our champion for this season. Dalking is having a 27-point lead over Operator going into this with only 2 rounds remaining. So if Operator has a bad race and Dalking has a good race, which he's had many of in recent races, then that could well be the championship over. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. We'll go through the standings, at least the top 10, in a bit more detail soon. But Yorkie, we are currently in the qualifying session. There is 6.5 minutes remaining, as we see Dalking, the championship leader, retiring back to the pit lane to refresh himself and go back out for another run.
Yeah, judging by the way his car was moving around, I think he wasn't too overly happy with his setup, as he was getting quite a lot of oversteer in a number of places, especially in attraction zones. So we'll jump on board with his teammate Operator, who was essentially, well, when we picked him up, was at exactly the same part of the track that Dalking jumped back to the pits at. So we get half a lap with Dalking, half a lap with Operator, just coming through the stadium section. Turns 13, 14, now into 15, before the long triple right-hander that's around the infamous tower that is here at the Circuit of Americas track. And I think this is going to be quite an interesting race in terms of managing tyres. It's going to be a very, well, it generally tends to be quite a hot track and quite punishing on tyres. And depending on people's setups, they may or may not have the grip that they wish for this circuit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, of course. It's a very varied circuit, isn't it, in terms of some long straights, some twisty bits, so you need a setup that can handle both of these things, which isn't always an easy task, of course. So looking at the early lap times in the session so far, they're all coming in now. Everyone completing their first run. Jadier is the man on provisional pole at the moment. CJB back in the pits at the moment. He's in second at Empower. The man is sitting 4th in the championship. Jadier's teammate in 4th at the moment. And Yamo holding a top 5 position as he stands. 9 tenths separating to the top 5. Obviously, we could probably expect quite big gaps around here. Not only is it a challenge in terms of the track to drive and making the setup, but it's also a very long track. So you can probably expect to see gaps larger than, for example, what we got well, in some of the more tight and shorter tracks of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's From my experience driving the LMP1 car around here in the Endurance League, or should I say in the build-up to the Endurance League in the test race, this is actually quite a medium to high downforce circuit, surprisingly. Kind of the first sector with the twisty section that leads into the S's is very reminiscent of the Magus Beckett's complex from Silverstone, and through there you do need the downforce. Obviously the long back straight, people tend to think because it's got a really long back straight that you need low downforce, but with 20 corners and quite a few of them being medium speed with some slow speed stuff as well, I'm intrigued to see what kind of setups the drivers have been going with, whether they have gone with a lower drag setup for that back straight, or whether they've gone something with a bit more wing angle and a bit more rake in order to try and generate a little bit more downforce to provide them with the grip. But that will obviously help them when it comes to countering the oversteer and hopefully help to manage the tyre heating issues as well.
Yeah, I imagine for the qualifying session you might definitely want pretty high downforce on the car, just to gain whatever time you can through, especially the S's you mentioned, and yeah, some of the medium speed corners. But then for the race, I wonder if anyone's going to be looking to maybe change their setup slightly for the race, just to get a little bit more speed on the straight, just for the purpose of potentially overtaking and or avoiding being overtaken by any cars who might have gone that route on the setup. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we get any clear straight line speed differences going into the race.
Yep, definitely that's what I'll be looking out for. But also, obviously, one thing to note with the race as well, you're running in dirty air with other cars around you. Generally, you lose a little bit more downforce with that, and it tends to be oversteer that kind of comes for it from running in the dirty air with someone else. So someone may be running a slightly higher wing, rear wing setup anyway. When it comes to the race, just to try and make the car a little bit more stable, because obviously it could be great having that straight line speed, but if you're not there because you're struggling through the corners leading to those straights, then you're going to struggle to try and pass before the braking zone.
Yeah, that's why it's such a tricky, well, it can be a tricky place to race really, because you have to, in order to get a run on the long back straight, you have to actually stay close through the S's. And that's not always too easy, especially in these big cars. If you're running behind someone, not only do you get the dirty air, it's got to be hard just to spot the apexes to get the good line through there.
Yep, that's very, very true. But coming into the final 1 minute and 20 seconds, Jardier at the moment in second place. Dowking's managed to get himself in first with a time that is 6.5 tenths quicker than Jardier's. Where is Operator at the moment? I'm not seeing his name. He's in 10th place.
Okay,
so
yeah.
He's well up place.
2 seconds! That is ominous from Dalking, but I can only assume that Operator's not really got a proper lap in yet.
Probably not. Where is he? He's just going onto the back straight now. So I think this lap that he's actually on maybe is one and only chance.
Oh yeah, 40 seconds left. I'm not sure he's going to make the line from here actually. Yeah, so it's a pretty slow third sector of the lap. And he's not even reached that yet, so he's coming out into the heavy braking at the end of the back straight, entering the third sector now. And yeah, he definitely won't get to the start-finish line again in 22 seconds. So this will be Operator's final attempt, and this is going to be crucial for the championship. If my math is correct, Operator needs to be in the top 5 of this race just to keep the championship alive if Dalking was to win it. Which of course Dalking is looking on course for at the moment with his provisional pole that he's holding. Jardier has managed to get himself closer to Dalking, but still almost 0.3 of a second behind, so it's going to be down to Operator, I think, to potentially challenge his teammate for the pole position. And here he comes around the final corner now, has to get a good run to the line. And what will it be for Operator? Let's see, he's actually been dropped to 11th while he's running towards the line, and it only gets 10th! 1.6 seconds off. He did improve his lap by 0.4 of a second, but that is a shocking qualifying by Operator standards, and has really handed a big advantage in the championship battle to Dalking.
Yep, he's going to have his work cut out for him in order to keep that championship fight alive. Just picking up M-Power. He's coming into the penultimate turn now. believe that he might be one of the last people out on the circuit going around. No, there's other people driving around, but he's diving into the pits anyway, so he is not going to be completing his lap. Godfather Shift is coming into the hairpin at the end of the long back straight, and he is bailing from his lap. Yarmo is just coming into that very long triple right-hander, which does absolutely murder the tyres in these hot conditions, and you can see his tail of that Lamborghini wiggling all over the place. He's managed to keep it in check. He's still pressing on, and it was also Big Prenta who he's actually now completed this lap, so it's Dubertsky who's going to be the next person coming across the line, currently in last position. But will he improve his lap time and pop himself higher up the field? He improves his lap, but not his position, so it's all on Jarmo as he comes across the line and didn't quite catch any changes in his lap time, but we'll see in a second.
Well, he is going to be starting in P8, is Jarmo, but it is Dalking who's going to be in pole position once again, and he picks up another championship point, of course, for that as well, which means the championship lead is now 28 points. And I will go through the permutations a bit later on. But Jadier is going to be starting second, and just behind him ahead of CJB with a good qualifying, and then M-Power. Big Prenta in 5th in his 2nd race in the league. Good job from him. Mr. Van Ommen in 6th. Benicili ahead of Yamo. Then Godfather Shift and the Operator. The big shock down in 10th place for this race. Neserovic, Tudesepak, Dakusa, Jordan, a new driver on the grid actually for this week, joining the league. He's going to be starting his first race in 14th place, ahead of Pantera. Jake, who also made his debut last week, and then Dubertsky rounding up the field.
So, we move into the race session. 29 laps at the Circuit of the Americas. It'll be 28 racing laps with 1 AOR manual formation lap that we usually do here. And as always, the drivers have their little 2-minute period at the beginning of the session just to double check they've got the right setup applied to the car, make any last-minute changes to that, and of course also double check their pit strategy, as well as the drivers are required to serve a mandatory pit stop in this race. They don't necessarily have to take any fuel on board, change tyres, they don't have to do any work to the car, but they do have to at least come into the pits once and stop in their pit box before heading back out onto the circuit as well. So it'll be interesting actually to see whether any drivers will be taking tyres in that mandatory pit stop, especially if they are struggling. But I imagine majority of drivers will just try and hold on to the tyres that they've got and try and keep them in good nick throughout the duration of the race.
Indeed, yeah. And we've seen a trend in recent races as well that most drivers actually tended to get their pit stop out of the way relatively early in the race, whereas in previous seasons we've seen quite a few actually waiting until the last possible moment. So that's always an interesting thing to keep an eye on throughout the race, when people choose to make the pit stop for a strategic reason. And before we get in the race though, we're still waiting for the countdown for the start. I'm going to quickly go through the standings of the top 10 here. Of course, there has been a total of 34 cars on the grid throughout this season. But here is the top 10 then. Dalking with a 27-point lead before the qualifying session. It's turned into a 28-point lead now with his pole over Operator, which means he could win the championship. And if he was to finish in the way it's starting here today, he would indeed do that. Operator in a second, 60 points though ahead of Jadier. At least he's relatively safe from him. And then M-Power in 4th. The Heidi, who is not here, is actually only done 3 races this season, and they were all clearly very good races from him, considering he's up in 5th despite that fact. Mr. Van Ommen only 2 points behind though, and will, with just a points finish here today, just by finishing the race here today actually, he will jump the Heidi in the standings. Benicili, 21 points further back, and then Murph, CJB and Dubertsky following quite closely. So then, Yoki, say some smart words, and then I will work out the championship permutations.
So, yeah, the guys are on their manual formation lap now. You can see that the lighting has changed slightly from the qualifying session. The sun has gotten that a little bit lower, so we're a little bit further into sunset. We've got real-time time acceleration, so that sun will get a little bit low, and we'll see a bit more pinky purpley hues in the sky. A lot of the drivers do have their headlights on to obviously combat that lower light, but track looking rather nice and pretty in these kind of conditions. I do remember the WC 6 Hours of Americas that they did some time ago. I think it was around 2014, 2015. Race started during the day, but as it got into the late afternoon, early evening, there was a massive, great big rainstorm that came in and completely soaked the track, but it stopped raining just before sunset and the sky cleared. So we had some beautiful clouds, and obviously with all the water on the track reflecting all the lights and the hues in the sky, it looked absolutely stunning. And yeah, Project Car's doing a pretty good job of replicating that in the sunset conditions.
Indeed. So for the championship then, Dalking starting first, Operator starting 10th. A huge job on his hand with that 28-point gap. So basically, if Dalking was to finish where he starts, which is of course in the lead and winning the race, Operator needs to be in the top 5 to keep the championship alive. If Operator was to then finish outside the top 5, Dalking has won the championship here at Circuit of the Americas. If Dalking was to drop down from first place, I believe Operator could get away with the top 7. And then if he drops further than that, we'll work that out as we come.
Yep. So we're just seeing all the drivers starting to form up into their 2x2 formation now, coming into the last couple of turns. What should I say? The last turn. And it is
very close,
pretty close between Jardier and CJB there. But any time between, I believe, now and the start-finish line, Dalking can put his foot down to begin the race. And he has done so now.
Here we go, and it's already almost 3 wide in the midfield as Dalking is just running away up the hill on the ascent into the first corner. A little bit wiggly from CJB on the inside, but Jardier beautifully holding it around the outside to stay in second place. Big Prentice gained a position up to 4th ahead of Empower, and there's been a big crash for Operator, the championship contender, with some damage already on the first lap. Huge damage actually between him and Godfather. A shift dropping to the back of the field. And is that the championship defining moment, Yoki?
Quite possibly. I think it was just Pantera there on his outside. Just turned in that little bit earlier, made contact with the outside of Godfather of Shift's car, and that just spun him round. Picking up Empower now, though. There's been, actually another change. I was going to say CJB managing to get ahead of Jardier in turn 1, but Jardier has managed to retain that position. Got Mr. Van Olmen coming down the inside of Empower, jumping on board with Jarmo here in 7th place, so he's gained a position off of the start, and we see that Mr. Van Olmen has managed to get that position over Empower into the hairpin, but now coming down the long back straight, we will see who has got the measure over who. Empower giving a little bit of bump draft there to Mr. Van Olmen, coming down towards the hairpin into the braking zone for the first time, and camera pan up, please.
Beautiful asphalt there.
There they are.
Yeah, Empower not going for the move back on Miss Van Olmen, really. Choosing instead to give him a bump draft. Slightly interesting strategic decision from him there, but yeah, behind him, Yamo picking up position off the start. Big Prentice picked up a position up to 4th. And we have lost Operator from the race. Do you know what that means, Yoki?
That has just handed the championship to Dalking.
Indeed it has. So
wow.
It only took 1 lap of this race, round 9 of the season, to crown our champion, assuming, of course, he finishes the race in a good position. We'll work out exactly what position he needs, as there's a huge battle, and too close they come. Pantera and Dabirsky, I believe. And Pantera going straight into the pits after that, but Dabirsky carrying her on to start the second lap. But already some big drama. Some cars not able to keep it clean. Mr. Van Olmen choosing to go into the pits. I don't think he has had any contact on this first lap, so that's a strategic decision from him and Empower, the guys who were battling and swapping positions actually, both choosing to pit at the end of the first lap. I wonder if they wanted to get away from each other to not have to keep battling, but they both made the same choice, which means they're going to have to keep battling whether they like it or not.
Yep, indeed. I think it was pretty unfortunate there between Pantera and Dabirsky. I think Pantera was wanting to dive into the pits after, I think it was him who made contact with Operator rather than Godfather or Shift. Obviously wanting to come to the pits to repair the damage, but Dabirsky was kind of there, and there was just a little bit of miscommunication between the two drivers, not really reading the situation particularly well, and there was more contact. But Duberski's continuing on round, and obviously we saw Pantera come to the pits, so onto the back straight again. Dakuza hunting down Nesterovic, who, well, there's a little bit of a train forming behind Yamo that we see there leading the pack, followed by Tudez, and then Benazili behind. Obviously Nesterovic, Dakuza, and Jordan there in 10th place. So he's made some ground in the opening laps to get up onto the back of that SLS, and he's hunting for a potential move somewhere along the line to see if he can sneak up into that 9th position and try and hunt down the drivers in front and see if he can pick up another couple of places there and get to the front of the train.
Yeah, of course, a good opportunity for these new drivers in the league, Jordan being one of them, of course, to pick up some really good points there on a day where we have unusually few cars on the grid, which means, yeah, certainly opportunities for these guys to climb up in the championship standings, despite only getting to do a few races for this season. Jordan now in 9th place because Benazili has gone into the pit lane as well. Oh my goodness, Godfather Shift's car is looking very interesting indeed. He's still running out there in 11th place, but that is one banged up Porsche, if I've ever seen one. Well, it doesn't even look like a Porsche anymore.
He looks perfectly fine to me.
Does he?
Damage. No, he looks perfectly fine. But,
it's literally crumbled to bits. From what I'm seeing, it's actually very interesting. It's like it's just reformed itself into a completely different make of car.
Wow, yeah. Here we see Jardier at the moment anyway, trying to keep up with Dowking in front of him. Dowking setting the pace on the previous lap with a 203.9. Jardier was the closest to him, I believe, yeah, with a 204.2. A little bit of a flash of the lights there coming onto the long back straight. I'm not entirely sure what that is for. And there you can see the low-lying sun in the distance over to the left-hand side of the picture, which the drivers are having to contend with coming into the braking zones. So it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for them to spot their braking points. As Jardier closes up a good few car lengths in the braking zone of Dow King in front of him. And it's in through this twisty section here that the Lamborghini will probably fare a little bit better than the Mercedes in front of him will be able to perform.
Yeah, I suspect this will be a battle for this race once again between Jardier and Dalking, the two guys that were, of course, battling for the win last time out as well at Daytona for a very long part of the race, actually until the end, if I remember correctly. This time it is Jardier behind, though. He, of course, was the man who won the race. It's actually quite interesting with Dalking, of course, now being in a prime position to win the championship. Actually, some news on Operator saying in the chat that he had to back out because of game stuttering or PC stuttering or whatever, which is, of course, really big shame. Technical issues for him, which I wonder if that affected his lapping qualifying as well. You never know.
Quite potentially.
Yeah, it's quite an unfortunate way, of course, to lose a championship challenge, and not the way we would have liked to have seen it. But of course, it is still not theoretically over while this race is still going on. Dalking still needs to finish, and by my calculations, Dalking needs another 23 points to guarantee himself. 24 points to guarantee himself the championship, which means he needs to finish in P6 or higher in this race in order to secure that.
Interesting. We're also starting to see some penalties actually popping up on the board as well. So let's take a quick look at that. CJB's got a 2-second penalty to his name. Tudez has got a single second. Mr. Van Orman, always a fond collector of penalties. He's got 2 seconds to his name as well. He's currently there in 12th place at the moment, leading the pack of cars that have made their pit stop. And Power is not too far behind, roughly lurking about 1.5 seconds at the moment. There you can see the two cars within the frame, and he's got Jordan a good 14.5 seconds up the road, who is the last of the non-pitters. So he's lost a couple of positions, I believe. He's lost a position to Godfather Shift, and also Jake is in there as well, battling away. Currently in 9th position, and Dakuza has got himself up into 8th after a couple of drivers have made their stops as well.
Indeed, yeah. So just trying to figure out who was pitted. So Mr. Van Ommen did go into the pits. Yeah, so 12th place, Mr. Van Ommen is the lead car of the pitters. So the bottom 5 have pitted. The top 11 still needs to do it at some point in the race. Following on with Dakusa at the moment as he makes his way through the final few corners past the Hot Wheels advertising boards, and now he also makes a choice to go to the pits. Don't brake too late there, that will lead you into the pit wall, but he's done it quite nicely, carrying good amount of speed on the pit entry and driving straight towards his pit crew, looking for a nice smooth stop. Makes his box and probably be dropping down to around Pantera maybe, if I remember where he was before as well. Now back on with the leaders though. Jadier trying to follow the Mercedes of Dalkin closely through the sweeping first sector into the second sector now. Up the hill we go. And looks to me that Dalkin is maybe pulling away a tiny bit through there. Jadier maybe having more of an advantage car-wise in the last sector of the lap, as you mentioned before. And once again closing a little bit on the braking. And Dalking trying to break the slipstream immediately by moving to the left side of the track and then back over to the right. I believe in the rules you're allowed to make one move across the track and then back again. And of course, assuming there's no car next to you, that you will then force off the track. But
Yep.
There we go. Jadier once again getting closer under brakes, but yeah, probably just biding his time here, Yoki, I think. Looking to stay close and then maybe... yeah, just waiting to strike at whenever he feels comfortable.
Yeah, I imagine so. He's got plenty of time in order to do so. Obviously on lap 6 out of 29 at the moment, so we've done 5 racing laps so far. Actually, 3rd and 4th place of Big Prenter and CJB have actually switched positions. Big Prenter is actually starting to close the gap to the 2 drivers in front of him. He's got it to around 2.5 seconds, there or thereabouts, just under. His previous lap time was about 4 to 5 tenths of a second quicker than both Dowking and Jadier on the previous lap. So we'll see what kind of pace the drivers have been doing on this lap. And well, actually, Big Prenter's
he's just picked up a penalty.
Penalty, hasn't he? Yeah, so that is a 1 second penalty that he has now got to his name as well. And also, Empower's got a 2 second penalty to his name, so that obviously would have affected his lap time, but still, Big Prenter isn't completely out of the picture on this one.
No, very impressive race from Big Prenter so far. Yeah, as I said, on the lap before this, he was running faster than the leaders. Of course, the penalty won't help him, but it's nice to see only in his second race in the league that he is running pace that is matching 2 of the... I guess by now we could call them veterans, pretty much, Dalking and Jadier, even though it's only Dalking's second season. Jadier's 4th, of course, having won the championship in his 3 first attempts. But yeah, Big Prenter having certainly much better race than he had in his debut at Daytona, where he only finished 14th. I can't remember if he had potentially some incidents in that race, but yeah. Let's hope he can keep up with the leaders and make it a 3-way fight at the front. I'm sure no one would mind. Except maybe Jadier and Dalking.
Yeah. I see that Jordan has been through the pits and made his pit stop, and also I believe VSR Jake has also done the same. They've come out behind the likes of Pantera and Dakusa. And oh no, Godfather of Shift is still out there out on track. He's up there in 8th position. I was just about to say we've lost Godfather of Shift, but we haven't. And this seems like the closest battle on track at the moment between 2 race leaders. So we'll stick with these 2. We'll keep an eye on that gap with Big Prenter behind them as well. And also CJB. They're lurking in 4th position in the background too.
Yeah, the gap. Oh, actually, strategic decision from Jadier already. After just 7 laps of this race, going into the pits to go for a potential undercut on Dalking. CJB following him in as well. So 2nd and 4th place, going for early pit stops there. Jadier had enough of the rear, staring at the rear of that blue Mercedes of Dalking. Looks like a pretty good stop to me. And I assume he will pop himself out in clean air. Miss Van Ommen is still some distance behind, of course, being the lead car of the pitters. And of course, being Jardier's teammate as well, you wouldn't expect him to trouble him too much. You can see him there actually coming down the straight, and that is Jardier heading into turn 1 now. Mr. Van Ommen though is actually very close to CJB, but CJB does stay ahead of him, as Mr. Van Ommen actually has M-Power only a few seconds behind as well. So yeah, let's see if Mr. Van Ommen then can challenge CJB. Otherwise, so we kind of run out of battles for a bit, because whoa, actually, yeah, that's gonna help Mr. Van Ommen to get close. So that was a very interesting line from CJB, and I wonder if he picked up any more penalties by that. Although he certainly didn't gain time from going off the track.
Yeah, he just caught a curb wrong, which unsettled the car and sent him off wide. But Mr. Van Ommen certainly did close up a couple of car lengths with that mistake from the Lamborghini driver in front of him, and obviously that will encourage him to apply the pressure and see if he can continue to close that gap down. It's currently lurking just underneath a second at the moment. It's the closest 2 cars that we have on circuit right now, as they're powering on down the back straight. See that the time is coming down just by a hundredth or so every second as they go down that straight. But Mr. Van Ommen obviously will have the flow a little bit after making his pit stop early and then doing a couple of laps, whereas obviously CJB in a way kind of almost reset himself by going in and making the pit stop and then coming back out just in front of the Lamborghini of Mr. Van Ommen.
Yep. So just a little shout out to the guys in the chat. It seems like we have several Big Prenta fans in there. So him and Yamo contesting the chat for most fans at the moment, I think. Which is cool to see. If you get all these fans, everyone cheering for Yamo and Big Prenta, just shout their names in the chat now, and then we'll see who wins. So that's another little battle for us. CJB actually, it looked like he went wide, but then he cuts it beautifully back to the apex, whereas Mr. Van Ommen is taking the complete opposite line through turn 1, taking a quite early apex and then running out wide on the exit. Don't think it's really mattered too much, because they still have the same distance.
Yeah, near enough, but I think the later apex in turn 1 is the quicker way through, certainly for getting the good run coming down the hill into turn 2 and then into the S's section. And obviously it allows you to be on the brakes just a little bit later as well, going into the first turn. It's just the more optimal line, certainly in the high downforce cars anyway. But at the moment, CJB seems to be holding off Mr. Van Ommen. But Jordan is now closing up onto the back of Jake. As we see here, the gap around about half a second and continuing to close as Jordan gets much better run through the S section and off the corner as well. This could be a potential pass for position, and it is, as Jake gets out of the throttle there, coming through the kink of turn 10 and allows Jordan to go through a potential slowdown penalty that Jake may be carrying and trying to clear. But now that he's behind the other Lamborghini driver, we'll see if he holds on. It seems like he's
dropped back
in a bit slow. Yeah, and he's just trying to clear a bit more of a penalty, and obviously Dubertsky is, well, now just under 2 seconds behind. Dowking is now into the pits.
Ooh, will we get our Jardier Dalking battle back already? I wouldn't mind this certainly, as Big Prenta goes into the lead of the race, so he's going to have some laps led, depending on, well, how many depends on, of course, how late he waits to make his mandatory pit stop. Where is Jardier, though? He can't be too far down the straight. That is Yamo's gone into second place at the moment. Tudesipak's got up to third, and here comes Jardier. Oh, and that is Dalking into turn 1 already, I think. Oh, it's nearly come together with Godfather shift in that, for me anyway, interestingly shaped Porsche. Ooh, that was very close indeed, and that is not ideal for Dalking. He has, of course, gained several seconds, actually, on a Jardier. Gained about 3 seconds on him through the pit stop phase, which, not sure how he managed that. Maybe just a better enter-exit to the pit lane, or somehow shouting at his pit crew to make really fast work of that, that service. But yeah, he's of course come out just behind Godfather shift, which means he might lose a bit of time trying to get that position. It's looking a little bit to the inside, but it's probably a better move to just wait for the straight. And once again, Godfather Shift taking this time the early apex. And I think Dalking has an easy run there. Godfather Shift not fighting that. And actually in the end, Dalking's not really lost out too much.
No, so that Godfather Shift actually nails his breaking point coming in and doesn't sail into the back of Dalking in front of him, which he does not do, so that is good. Mr. Van Orman has got the gap back down to 6/10 to half a second or so, and closing up a little bit more in the apex as well of that turn 12 at the end of the back straight. It just seems to be that a little bit tighter and neater through the corners in comparison to CJB in front of him, although well, he did manage to get back to the apex, though. I was going to say, did look like he was going deep, but he has lost a 10th or so with that. Big Prentice now into the pits as well. So a number of drivers are making their stop reasonably early, or earlier than we usually see. Tends to be that the front runners who are in clear air just tend to keep going towards the end of the race and then pit at a later point, whereas those in and around the pack try and make their stop early in order to get into that clear air, and it then just becomes essentially a gap battle with the lap times.
Yeah, so Big Prenta only wanted one lap in the lead then, which is interesting. If I was in that situation in the lead of the race, I would have just stayed out and get as many laps in the lead for my stats as possible. But Big Prenta coming out, ooh, just ahead of CJB, and they were of course close before, and that is a good job for Big Prenta to keep hold of that position then, but only just. So this is a potential three-way battle with Big Prenta ahead of CJB, ahead of Mr. Van Orman, very closely matched throughout this race so far. And yeah, Jarmo now actually into the lead of the race, so his fans got something to shout about then. Let's see, so yeah, now we have the top three are the only ones actually yeah, plus Godfather Shift in fifth are the only ones not to have stopped.
Yep. Cracking on, as you can see. So Big Prenta actually looked like he was coming out under a little bit of pressure there coming off the exit of the turn 11 hairpin. You see CJB there in the slipstream of the Lamborghini in front of him. Kind of sat pulling out, Big Prenta kind of presenting a slightly more defensive line. But they both come in, and CJB nailing the apex a little bit better than Big Prenta there. So again, another car length or so closed up between the two drivers. Mr. Van Orman's also going to be there, lurking pretty close behind. Not too close as we can see, but starting to close up, especially if CJB starts to get held up by Big Prenta there in essentially a net third position.
Yeah, this is the battle for the podium. Asiyama as well, only choosing one lap in the lead, but man, maybe all these people are just scared of leading the race, worried about I don't know, the fame getting to them. I don't know. But yeah, so we're following this net battle for third then. CJB is getting very close, and now actually all of the remaining guys, except for Nesterovic, have gone into the pit lane, which means these guys are going to gain some positions. We get CJB is trying to get close to Big Prenta, not choosing to take all the slipstream he could have possibly gotten there. Now braking on the outside, Mr. Van Orman closing up massively in the braking zone as well, with this interesting line comparatively to CJB, at least, with that early apex once again. But CJB getting a great exit. It's not really anywhere to pass for him now, and now it's going to be hard for CJB just to keep close. You already saw that his line was compromised slightly, gone into the first part of the S's. Just didn't find the right line, and he seems to be understeering slightly more than the yellow Lamborghini ahead of him in that dirty air as well. Mr. Van Orman, though, doing a good job to keep close. Yeah, all these guys in the Lamborghini, so this is a three-way Lamborghini battle as well, which is interesting. It's all down then to the setup and the driver skill in terms of who's going to win out on this one. You can see Jardier not too far ahead as well. But yeah, this is going to be hopefully a race-long battle. This is of course what we're going to be hoping for here. But I don't think CJB is going to be close enough to get enough of a run on this occasion.
I don't think so, no. He's, if anything, slightly further back than he was previously last time round. Nailing the breaking point, though, is Big Prenta
both
and
of them
CJB
went deep,
for that matter. Yeah, it's allowed Mr. Van Orman to get pretty close there, coming off the corner, but again, not quite close enough. It's going to be a little bit frustrating for him, seeing these guys battling away and then seeing his teammate Jardier, who's just up there in front of him, who's just disappeared out of the picture, off behind the barriers through the turn 16, 17, 18 complex, which we are going through now. Just seeing his teammate disappear off into the distance a little bit, might be a little bit frustrating for him. So he'll be looking to try and get himself up onto the podium as we see the sunset there in the background, just behind that Hot Wheels sign. It's getting very, very close to darkness.
Woohoo! Big tank slapper from Mr. Van Ammen coming out of the final corner as well. But yeah, we're running into the sunset now. Well, we are at the sunset. We're running into the night here gradually, and still not halfway yet. So in this race, plenty of time for these guys to battle it out for the net third position. And once again, CJP getting close coming out of turn 1, and then let's see now if he can nail his lines a little bit better in the wake of that. It's almost a lemon Lambo actually. Not too bad. And this time I think CJB is able to stay reasonably close so far anyway. Still a few tricky corners to go before they get to the start of that back straight. Oh, look at that beautiful pink sky in the background as well. Nice clear weather. No rain forecasted for this one. And actually CJB getting very close now. Hitting the apex nicely. Could be within striking range here. They both pulled away from Mr. Van Ammen slightly. Probably because of that time slapper that he had. Let's see now if there's any clear straight line speed difference between these two Lamborghinis. And of course it's going to be a little bit of a slipstream effect for CJB, but not too much. And well, it seems like he needs to be even closer than he was on that case if he wants to get the pass done.
Yeah, he's not quite there. Close enough. Big Prenter isn't really going too heavily defensive at the moment either, so it doesn't really feel threatened coming down that back straight. As CJB kicking out the rear end coming in towards the apex on turn 15 there. He's managed to hold on to it. I thought he was going to go round for a second, but good job on collecting that one back up. But it has cost him 2 to 3 tenths of a second and brought him back towards Mr. Van Ammen. So it's given Big Prenter a little bit more breathing room in that one as well. There's also a couple of other cars a little bit further back in the field as well who are reasonably close. Benazili and Jarmo are reasonably close, and then M-Power isn't too far ahead of them there. You can see all three in the picture now. M-Power seeming like he's struggling with pace a little bit and isn't quite able to keep up with Mr. Van Ammen, who was right behind in the pit stop phase. And then also have Godfather of Shift and Jordan fairly close together as well.
Yeah, so actually some decent battles forming here, and I think Godfather of Shift might actually look for an attack quite soon on Jordan, the debutant. Let's see, Godfather of Shift has done plenty of races in this league and is going to go for a little cheeky dive there. Very late on the brakes, very squirrely, and actually Jordan doing a great job to hold it around the outside, just leaving enough space, and there's still side by side, tiny bit of side banging there actually, and Godfather Shift flashing his light, not too happy with that potentially. I don't think there was too much wrong from what Jordan did there, just a little bit of touching, but then he actually lets him go.
I didn't think that was necessary. I think Jordan was expecting Godfather of Shift to move across the circuit to open up turn 2, whereas Godfather of Shift just held his line. It was very 50-50. I don't think Jordan needed to give up the position there as Dubirsky has had a spin in the background. So yeah, Godfather of Shift kind of in a way almost bullied that position out of Jordan with the flash of the lights, as Dubirsky is going to lose the position to Jake coming into the turn 11 hairpin. Yep.
So Dubirsky spinning, having just a big enough spin to lose that position, but getting a decent run though, and it's gonna be some more side by side until Dubirsky then has to slow down instead, which is unfortunate for everyone watching. Not too unfortunate for Jake though. He will then be 15th for the moment. Jordan trying to fight back on Godfather Shift, but not able to do too much at the moment. Yeah, it was certainly an interesting one. I wonder if Jordan maybe feeling on his debut race a little bit, you know, respectful of his elders, so to speak, in terms of amount of races done in the league, and yeah, didn't want to upset anyone on his first race. So when Godfather of Shift just flashes lights, even if maybe it was a little bit naughty. Yes, actually.
Ooh, that's
who is that? Chedesapax had a problem, a big problem. He's going very slowly indeed. Not sure what's going on there. This car seems relatively okay.
We think.
Well, but not well. Visually, not internally. From by the looks of it, it's going very slowly for whatever reason.
So visually, it looks fine, unless he's got some suspension damage from somewhere. He's very, very slow. Perhaps he's got a technical issue.
Yeah,
it's the only thing I can
maybe it's
think of.
Lost his throttle pedal or something, or part of it anyway.
Either way, Mr. Van Orman has closed up onto the back of CJB, and I think CJB has actually lost ground and lost touch to Big Prenta. In front of him, you can see the gap there, so possibly a mistake by that red Lamborghini driver, which has brought Mr. Van Orman right up into play, very, very close between the two there, into the hairpin at the end of the straight in turn 12. But avoiding to make contact, both drivers still pressing on. Jump on board into the roof camera. We can see just how close these three drivers are and the various different lines that they are taking through these various different sequence of corners. The battle continues on as that sun is getting ever lower in the sky.
Indeed. Worth pointing out that Mr. Van Orman has had a couple of podiums already in the season, a couple of third places, whereas of course Big Prenta is only his second race, hunting for his first ever podium in this league, and CJB hunting for his first podium in this season. His best finish has been fourth place, which was in round 3. So much to fight for. As Nesterovic, who was leading the race due to not having pitted, he now also makes his mandatory pit stop. So now everyone has stopped, as Mr. Van Orman gets very close indeed. Not really gone actively for the move there, but he gets a good run out of the first corner. And then he gets to the S's, where he can't pass.
Yeah, I thought he was going to have an almighty run coming off of turn 1 there, but CJB managed to hook himself up in the traction zone as Mr. Van Orman gets a slight wiggle there through the apex of that long right-hander of turn 6, looking to the inside, but that move isn't really going to work unless you properly scare the driver in front of you off of their line. But CJB seemed to be a little bit wiser, gave a bit of room on the inside, but not so much that he lost a whole load of time. Mr. Van Orman seems very, very eager though to see if he can potentially get past and up into 4th place, as he's probably seeing that Big Prenta there in front of him is starting to eat that gap out and pull away from these two drivers.
Indeed. So new leader then in the race after Nesterovic pitted is now Dalking back in front where he belongs, some might say, even though he's actually... What is also... Oh my goodness me, there's been a little nudge. I thought it was going to spin him around there for a second. Mr. Van Orman just a little love tap in the back of CJB, braking slightly later. Luckily they both got away with it. Van Orman just about getting his slow down in time, but is that a sign that he maybe is starting to get a little bit impatient here? Maybe feels like Big Prenta is starting to run away. He wants that podium, and he can't afford to get stuck behind the CJB too much longer. Yeah, it certainly seems to me that Mr. Van Orman is actively now trying to force the issue and get himself ahead.
Yeah, he certainly seems eager. I think it might have been possibly braking at the same time as CJB, but being in the dirty air, you do lose a bit of your braking power, and you don't quite bleed off the speed as quickly as the car in front of you. And sometimes that can catch you out. I probably thought it'd just be better to just make the slightest of brushes to the back of CJB's car square on, rather than you know, trying to dart around and potentially clipping one side of his rear bumper and spinning him round, or himself round. So kind of, yeah, wise by Mr. Van Orman just to kind of go in square and suck it up, but at the same time not so wise, because you don't really want to be doing that in the first place and risking quite substantial damage to either of the two cars.
Yeah, of course these guys pushing these cars to the absolute limit of their ability, so it's easy to make, you know, these tiny misjudgments. You can pull that brake a split second too late, and then that is what can happen. Luckily, it was only a slight brush, and this time around, Mr. Van Omen, unless he brakes even later this time, has lost a little bit of ground. So I think CJB can chill out for a few moments here and regather his thoughts. And actually, they've both closed down slightly on Big Prenta as Van Omen slides his car through the hairpin. So Big Prenta has actually lost a little bit of time in this lap so far, because on the previous lap he was over a second quicker than these guys. Maybe caused by that little touch that they had, of course. But yeah, Big Prenta now having maybe had a little mistake somewhere, which has brought these closer again.
Yeah. Still pressing on. Just about to come into lap 18. Where is Dow King? I believe he's on the start-finish straight. Just come out of the final turn. So we'll begin lap 18 of 29. 11 laps remaining. He's got a reasonably healthy lead of 3.2 seconds at the moment. The gap has slowly been increasing over the last few laps, and it's increased by another 0.8 of a second there on that previous lap to second place man Jardier, as he's dropping down the hill and into turn 2. And then we've got the battle for third position with Big Prenta, CJB and Mr. Van Omen. Big Prenta with a little bit more breathing room now than he had previously. The gap lurking just over 1 second to CJB behind him, and then Mr. Van Omen is there just under 0.3 of a second to CJB, although that wasn't the best line. Very well held there, very well gathered back up once again. Just caught the curb wrong. These curbs are quite big and serrated. If you do catch them awkwardly, it can very easily unsettle the car, which I think is exactly what happened to Mr. Van Omen there, just kind of stepping the wheels over to the other side of the curb and just getting them snagged on it slightly. But he hasn't really lost too much time to CJB.
No, not at all. It's very interesting. Yeah, great save, to be honest, from Mr. Van Omen there. He just hit that hard edge of the curb, and well, the curb certainly wanted to spin him around, but no doing. I do apologise for your ears, Eden, by the way. I got a little bit too excited. Oh no! And I apologise once again, but that is too late braking from Mr. Van Omen. Another time, both of them flashing their lights there, not what either of them would have wanted. I wonder if Mr. Van Omen just braked too late, or if CJB, by his liking anyway, braked a bit early. But either way, they're both coming together at the apex and keeping their car pointing the right way once again, but clearly losing time.
Yeah, that was very much a flash of what was that? What are you doing? Flash from CJB and sorry, carry on from Mr. Van Omen. I think I don't know. To me, it almost looked like CJB got on the brakes a little bit too late. Mr. Van Omen got on the brakes at the right time, and Mr. Van Omen was kind of going for the lunge, expecting CJB to go deep, but CJB still managed to get the car slowed down and into the apex of the corner. So, yeah, just an unfortunate little bit of a racing incident there. Mr. Van Omen may have been slightly optimistic in that, but he's done the right thing though. Just about managing to hold on to the rear of the car there, coming off of turn 1. Drivers are probably really struggling with tyre temperature at this stage, but obviously with that sun having now set, track temperature and ambient temperatures will be starting to plummet, so the tyres may come back to the drivers towards the end of the race.
Indeed. So of course something we don't really think much about sitting in the commentary box, but there's so much more that these drivers have to manage throughout the race, such as the tyre temperatures and stuff like that, which yeah, we don't really get too much insight in when we're just sitting up here watching them from the outside. There's there's a lot of skill involved to get the maximum out of these cars. Mr. Van Omen just struggling a little bit on this lap so far, and in recent laps maybe, certainly on the brakes. But yeah, it's still quite a way to go in the race. Over 10 laps to go. As once again he's wiggling his way down into the apex, and I've completely forgot what I was about to say then. So I'll just won't say it.
Fair enough. I just jumped to Jake, who's currently in last position. We have lost one driver. Just having a quick
Yeah, it
look
would have been to Desert Pack,
who
who was, of course, struggling earlier on.
Yeah, very good shout with that one. So yeah, Jake, just over a second off of the back of the Birdski at the moment. Nesterovic is under a second to Pantera, and then Pantera's teammate Gofro Shift is there about a second and a half behind the Lamborghini driver we're currently watching. So there's a couple of close battles around the circuit. It looks like that Jardier's managed to close up a little bit on towards the back of Dowking as well. The gap has gone from 3.2 seconds down to 2.3, 2.4 seconds. So they're coming through the S's section at the moment. Only 3 attempts taken out on the previous lap. But these cooler conditions could probably suit that Lamborghini a little bit more in these corners and help it to close up onto the back of the potential championship winner.
Yeah, Dalking, of course, heading towards that championship as it stands at the moment. He just needs to avoid dropping out of the top 6, and at the moment he has got a 20-second gap to Benny Seeley, who's running in 7th place. The first position that would put, well, would delay his championship victory until next week. Nice though, I did see Operator actually cheering on Dalking in the chat earlier on, which is fair play. Of course,
yep.
They are championship rivals, but they're also teammates, so I'm sure they are working closely together on a daily basis to prepare for these races. Operator having bad luck with some technical issues, forcing him to drop out very early in this race, which seems, as it stands, to have gifted the championship to Dalking. He did, of course, already have a 28-point lead, so he might well have won it anyway, even if not this week. We still have a round to go at Nürburgring, the delayed race from earlier in the season, coming up next week to end the season. But yeah, as it stands, Dalking looking for that championship. And what is actually interesting is that, just looking at the results this season so far, Dalking, despite having a clear championship lead, he's only won 1 race. He's had 4 second places, but he's only had 1 race win, whereas Operator has had 3, Jarder has had 3. So yeah, Dalking just being the most consistent of the championship protagonists, which is putting him in this good position.
Yeah, well, if I remember correctly, Dalking had a very good start to the season. He was, I believe, leading in a number of the races early on. He just made a mistake somewhere along the line that allowed other drivers through. I think he may have had a spun or a bit of a contact, which dropped him down, and he ended up getting 4th position in the opening round. And then I think there may have been another slight mistake that just handed the position to Operator. Some smaller mistakes in round 2 or 3. So I can remember telling him to keep on at it, because he was so very close in a number of rounds. A little flash of lights there from Jardier.
Yeah,
as he is closing up.
Maybe it's just saying, "Hey, do you want a battle? Can we have a battle, please?" He's certainly closing those. He's trying to make the battle happen. He's closed a lot on the previous lap.
The gap is now down to under 2 seconds, lurking in and around the 1.5, 1.6 mark. Seemed like Dalking managed to extend that gap a little bit on the straight, so potentially he is running a slightly less draggy setup, whereas Jardier seems to be closing up a fair bit more in the corners, it seems.
Yeah, it's interesting what you mentioned about Dalking actually from the start of the season, and it was the same case last season as well. He did tend to be quite mistake prone. Of course, he had to wait a season and a half to get his first win, despite he always had the pace to win races, but always something happening that just prevented him from getting it until round 5 of the season at the Red Bull Ring. But yeah, he seems to have eradicated that for the most part in recent weeks, which means that he's certainly a force to be reckoned with at the moment. Dalking is, and yeah, look at this though, battle for 10th place, very close between Pantera, Nesterovic and Godfather Shift, scrapping for that final top 10 position.
Yep, I thought as things were relatively quiet at the front, I jumped to this on-track battle with the 3 cars, Nesterovic being the Lamborghini meet and go for an almighty lunge there to the inside of Pantera. Pantera just about saw it coming and left him just about enough racing room on the inside, but not overly phased by that as Nesterovic had to retake the position there in 11th place. Godfather of a Shift though going for the lunge down the inside of Nesterovic. There is contact between the two drivers as Godfather of a Shift was forced to go up over the curb on the inside. It just seemed like it was a light scrape across the fenders and down the side between the two cars. Neither driver really losing too much time or seeming like they picked up any damage heavily affected by that. So the driver is carrying on, but a couple of desperate lunges here by a few of the drivers. Yeah,
it's getting a little bit impatient, some of these guys, even though it's still over 7 laps to go in the race. Godfather Shift, he can't really get further up, you would think, than 10th. Maybe he can catch Dakuza. He's for the 4 seconds ahead of this battle. But then there's a huge 11-second battle up to Yamo, and that is a... Oh no! Nesterovic just tapping Pantera at the wrong part of his car there. Uncontrollable spin for Pantera, couldn't save it at all. Nesterovic, of course, doing the sportsman-like thing. Waiting for him, little flash of the lights there as well to say sorry. But yeah, that's unfortunate. Of course, gifted Godfather Shift a couple of positions, which means he can now go chasing after Dakuza. It's 5 seconds he needs to find to make that battle happen. And Nesterovic will be forced to carry on behind Pantera and try to find another way through with a little bit less aggression.
Yeah, that was a little bit desperate, really. That move wasn't really necessary. It's you got that long back straight there, so providing that you got a decent run through that and off in the traction zone, you probably would have had the slipstream and been in a much better position to try and take the position from Pantera coming into turn 12 rather than turn 11. So I'm not entirely sure what his thinking was there, other than to try and possibly clear Pantera as quickly as possible to go chasing after the Birdski, but in doing so, he's just presenting himself to a whole lot more risk, and obviously he's paid for it, losing the position to Godfather of a Shift, so he's now back down in 12th place and lost a whole bunch of time waiting from Pantera as well. But he may go for another lunge here in turn 1. No, no, it doesn't.
He's decided against it that time. I was like half expecting it there, just you know, based on recent events, maybe to make us think that he would have gone for it. But it's learned his lesson, it seems, at least for now. Nesterovic waiting for a slightly better opportunity, waiting until he's at least a little bit closer before making that dive once again. You can see some headlights in the back as well. That is Jordan, the new boy in the league. He's about 4 seconds behind. Nesterovic really closing up through the S's. Would have been an interesting, well, would have taken a very interesting move if he was to get past through there somewhere. We actually nearly saw a lunge through there from another car earlier in the race. This time though, Pantera going very defensive, just making sure he doesn't get Nesterovic on his inside. And that's a big tank slapper, just as he got on the throttle on that curb, kicking the rear round and ended his challenge for now. And that's maybe that's why he didn't go for that tactic last time around and wanted to make the move before the corner, because he knew that would happen.
Yeah, well, he's kind of put off and out of his rhythm a little bit. The car was kind of unsettled from jumping on and off the brake right on the apex as Pantera was a little bit slow there, obviously trying to hold Nesterovic up a little bit coming off of the corner as part of his defence, and then obviously when it came to the power, it's just a little bit too much by the Lamborghini driver and got the tank slapper. Otherwise he would have been right there on the rear bumper and rear wing as we saw of the Porsche in front of him, but that hasn't quite worked out. So the Birdski is there at the back of the field with a little bit of damage to his car, seems, on the front and also down the sides. He's right behind Jake at the moment, so 2 Lamborghini drivers going at it at the back here. Also just take a quick look at the penalties as well. Big printer there with 1 second. CJB now with 6 seconds with Mr. Van Orman 3 seconds. I believe those 2 drivers are pretty close, and Mr. Van Orman may just be holding station behind CJB, trying to stay within those 3 seconds in order to pick up the position through penalties. Empire, as you can see, he's got 4 seconds. Godfather Shift has got a single second to his name, as has the Birdski, and then Jake has got 2 seconds to his name. So even if the Birdski holds station this close to Jake as he's going very deep and getting very sideways through the corner. Dubirsky taking a little bit of avoiding action and may potentially be passed. Potentially, maybe coming into the intersection side by side. Oh, the drivers are going to sort it out. Jake conceding the position, it seems. So Dubirsky up into 4th place. But I was going to say, even if Dubirsky did hold station right behind Jake, he would have picked up the position through the penalties anyway. But yeah, the 2 drivers did swap positions in the end.
Ooh, well, it's always a scary moment going side by side with someone into those S's. It's like, do I want to back out? Do I want to be brave? And Dubirsky was the brave one on this occasion. Jake just backing out of it as Dubirsky has a big slide in the braking zone, locking those rear tires probably. As he slides around and gets it controlled up to still get a decent run onto the straight in what is essentially the battle to avoid the wooden spoon of the remaining drivers in this race. But it's still going to be for decent points, of course, 14th and 15th place for those guys, as we're now looking at Jardier, who has actually got the gap down to about a second. Could we yet see a battle for the win in this race? It's yeah, we're on lap 25 out of 29 now, so 4.5 laps remaining approximately of this race. And Jardier is certainly pushing hard to try and get close to Dalking. Does not want to give up the fight just yet. Wants to get his 4th win of the season and make this interesting here in the final stages. And Dalking, wow, very interesting line out of the corner there. Just immediately moving to the left side of the track. Maybe he lost the back end slightly. That made him go over to that side. I don't know. But yeah, Jardier once again getting closer now. Only 9/10 of a second behind. And if the early part of this race is anything to go by, he will also close up through this braking zone, which he does indeed. And now we have a battle on our hands once again. Yeah,
a fight for P1. You see the night is starting to come in a little bit as well. The sky hasn't really quite gone dark yet, but you can see kind of more creamy yellowy hue. That famous Kota Tower is standing out a little bit more prominently than it was previously, as the lights are starting to shine on the spire going up. Things are looking dark on the horizon, as you can see, but Jardier has got that gap now to 0.4 of a second to Dalking in front. You can see visibly the difference between the air between the 2 cars when we first picked up Jardier to how it is now. Just 0.4 of a second as they come across the line. With 3 whole laps remaining, it seems like Dalking's on the back foot a little bit, and Jardier really trying to apply the pressure and really applying the throttle coming off of the first turn as well. Laying down probably quite a nice big fat number 11, and obviously, as we saw, kicking out the rear tail for good measure, coming through the SS section, following him quite nicely at the moment, but it's not really going to be any real passing opportunity until they can get into the braking zone of turn 11. But the best opportunity is probably going to be on the end of the long back straight into the braking zone of turn 12.
Yeah, but this is the closest we have seen Jardier to Dalking since the very first laps of this race. We've come a long way since then. Nearly been an hour of racing here at Circuit of the Americas. And look at this though, Jardier, oh, nearly running off the track as well, but he's so close now. Dalking does not want him to get slipstream, but Jardier is just following his line, trying to grab as much of that as possible. Mercedes though, we know the Mercedes tends to be good in a straight line. Moving to the inside now to defend is Dalking. Jardier, he knows that Jardier is better on the brakes, of course, at least he has been quite a few times in this race so far, getting a great run as well. Dalking once again going defensive here as we enter the 3rd and final sector of this lap. Jardier trying to find a way around the outside, but no doing there. Dalking still carrying enough speed through the corners. And this is such so many lines you can take through this section here. And Dalking picking a half defensive line just to make sure it was hard for Jardier to make a move. But Jardier is all over the back of Dalking at the moment. And it could yet be a long way for Dalking for his 2nd win, despite looking so strong. But Jardier just in this second part of the race coming alive and applying ultimate pressure. 3 laps of battling to go.
Yeah, that's coming across to begin lap 27 of 29. Just coming right down to the wire. Dalking will really need to stick his elbows out, as once again he's going defensive coming into the first turn, forcing Jardier to go the long way around the outside, but Jardier will probably want to switch back. It's right up underneath the rear wing of the Mercedes AMG in front of him. Dalking still holding firm and holding position for the moment. Now this is the part where Jardier will need to just settle in behind the Mercedes in front of him, just follow him through and just try and stay close, because there isn't any real passing opportunity unless the driver in front of you does make quite a major mistake and presents you with quite a big space to work with. Initially there, it looked like Dalking was right on the money with the line, but his apex was a little bit deep, and that's kind of put him on the back foot on the approach to turn 11. Once again, he's forced to go defensive as Jardier is looking to the outside. Jardier will be looking for that switchback and a good run coming off the corner, but Dalking parks his car there on the exit and forces Jardier to go a little bit wider, and Dalking has moved right over as far left as he possibly can to block that inside line for turn 12.
Oh my god, this is getting very intense now. They're pretty much side by side heading into the braking zone. Jardier trying to brake later on the outside. Can he keep it around the outside? He's certainly trying. Dalking's forced to leave him room, and Jardier's claimed the inside line for the right-hander, and that could well be job done for him unless Dalking can get a better run. Oh, he's trying to stay side by side with him there, but Jardier carrying the momentum around the outside. Dalking braking very late indeed. A little bit of touching between them as well as he's trying to force his way back side by side with the black Lamborghini ahead of him, but that is Jardier into the lead of this race for the first time on lap 27 out of 29.
Yeah, I think Dalking was trying to lunge back there at Jardier, as they both looked a little bit slow coming through the that second to last turn, as if they were both backing off, but picked up the pace again there. But yeah, I think Dalking was trying to lunge back underneath Jardier coming into that turn 15 hairpin, and Jardier just kind of slammed the door shut last minute, which caused the slight bump between the two. A little bit of a flash of lights there from Dalking, potentially to try and distract Jardier. It doesn't seem like Dalking's giving up, so it seems like he's still potentially got the pace. I mean, he's just over half a second. He has lost to the Lamborghini in front of him. So it'll be interesting to see how he'll manage the S section here, and if he can close up that gap at all and potentially be in with a chance of trying to take the position back at the end of the long back straight.
Yeah, this is the first time Dalking is running through these corners with the dirty air, of course, apart from that one lap in the middle of the race where he was stuck behind Godfather shift briefly. And you can see him visibly losing quite a lot of time to Lamborghini. The Mercedes not liking those corners one bit, and Jardier extending that gap to around a second now. As Dalking is this time not moving to the left side because he no longer has a car immediately behind him. Jardier pulling away, and it now looks like it's going to be his race win once again. It's yeah, it's a shame for Dalking, of course. He certainly fought hard there, tried to defend as well as he could from Jardier, but it does look like Jardier is going to get his 4th win of the season, and Dalking's going to have to settle for 2nd place once again, even though he's still heading for the championship, of course, and that is the first place that really matters.
Yep. Still 15 drivers. Let's do a very quick penalty update before we join the last lap. Oh, Jardier's got 1 second penalty. So Dalking's got to get just a little bit closer at the moment. He's just over a second to Jardier. Jardier is obviously going to be pushing hard to try and get that 1 second cleared now. Big Prince has got a second to his name. CJB has got now 8 seconds. He previously had 6. Mr. Van Orman is there within that 8-second window with 3 seconds to his own name. Oh, Dalking's going to run wide there in the background. Could be a penalty potentially for him. Empower's got 4 seconds to his name. Godfather Shift still on 1 second. Birdsky and Jake both have 2 seconds apiece as well. So providing that Dalking hasn't picked up a penalty from that last corner excursion, he just needs to close in that half a second to Jardier in order to reclaim that race win.
Yeah, it's not over yet then. It's given Dalking a final opportunity, that penalty from Jardier, and it's going to have to be a big final lap from the man who's heading towards his first AOR championship here. If you can close that down, and you can see the gap down to 1.1 through the SSR. Dalking is pushing hard to try and get this win. Jardier has to run for everything is worth here. This is really going to be a battle of who can get the best out of this final lap. Dalking needs to get within that 1 second to get the position and the race win to crown his championship in the best possible way here at Circuit of the Americas, with standing on the top step of the podium. Big Prent has actually been closing slightly on these guys as well, 7.5 now behind Dalking. But it is the gap between the top two that we have to keep looking at until the end of this lap, Yoki. As in now at this moment, it was very briefly under a second.
Yeah, I don't know if he actually caught the cut the curb slightly on the inside of turn 12. I did just do a quick penalty check there, coming down that back straight, just to make sure that Dalking didn't pick up the penalty in the final corner, which he hasn't. He's still right there, teetering around that second. It's so very tense that into the last sector now for this race. On the final lap, Jardier is going to be pushing all that he possibly can to try and keep that gap. Same with Dalking as well. It's going to be exceptionally close between the two drivers. Jardier now just coming into the final turn of this race, getting a clean run off the exit. So does Dalking as well. That gap is 1.3 seconds as Jardier comes across the line. He looks like he's going to retain the lead for round 9.
Oh, and Dalking actually picked up a penalty for himself as well, just pushing that hard on the final lap. 2 seconds. But he certainly gave it a shot. It is though going to be Jardier for the win. Big Parenta coming home in third on his second race in the league to take home a podium. Fantastic stuff from him. CJB crosses the line in fourth with his penalty though. Jarops down behind Mr. Van Ommen, who's going to get that fourth place. CJB in fifth. Empower, pretty silent race from him, coming across in sixth in the end. Benicili, same for him. Actually, he jumps Empower up to sixth place because of no penalties. Diabo also with no penalties, going to come across in eighth place. Then Dakusa with a solid ninth place, assuming he doesn't crash on the final corner. There we go, getting that Mercedes SLS around and across the line. And Godfather Shift still in that, for me, very banged up Porsche. Very interestingly shaped indeed, coming across to get the final top 10 position. And it's going to be Pantera in the Porsche Nesterovic as well. Just having some fun there after the finish line. Jordan as well on his debut, getting 13th, some solid points for him. And then it's going to be Dabursky and Jake eventually coming through for the final 2 positions.
Yeah, coming across that line now. Turns off the lights as he comes across the line, and then here comes Jake, just slowly trundling his way around the final turn. He knows he's not going to be close enough to Dabursky in order to take the position, so just cruising to the finish, and that is going to be it for round 9.
It is
Only
indeed.
one more round remaining.
Yeah, so Jardier wins the race, Dalking the king of second places this season, his 5th second place. Despite only 1 race win. However, he has got the win where it really matters, and that is the championship. With Operator having issues, dropping out early in the race after also poor qualifying session, Dalking, with that second place, has secured the Season 12 championship in the PCT1 in the AOR GT3 league. So hopefully he will come and chat to us, and we can get his thoughts on that. It is indeed in the ready for interview box. We have Jardier, we have Big Prent as well to come and speak to us in a second. So Yoki, I think we can go ahead and drag those guys in here.
Yeah.
Let's see. There we go. So 3 guys in the commentary box. Gonna have to ask you, Big Prenta, if you can please just unmute your microphone, so I don't hear myself. I don't like hearing my voice. Thank you very much. Let's start with Jardier, because he won the race.
Yes!
You did win the race, Jardier. That was a hefty fight at the end. Looked like it was all over for you earlier in the race, and then you just got massive speed and caught Dalking with just a few laps remaining.
Yeah, I actually thought my race is over after the pit stop, because I don't know why, but my pit stop was so long. And I was just giving it everything, like everything. In the last 10 laps, I was just trying everything I could, like using the setup to the maximum. And like it was horrible, because 1 lap I improved half a second, and Dalkin also improved half a second, so it was so crazy. And then we had amazing fight, absolutely amazing fight, and then I don't know what happened there. Like if Dalkin got some damage or something, because I got a little off, like millimeter off when I got a little push, and I don't understand why I got a slowdown, because we both slowed down for 3 seconds, and I still got a 1 second penalty.
Ah, yeah, we saw you go slowly for a bit there.
Yeah. I was so like, I didn't understand why I got a slowdown. The penalty, and then suddenly Dalkin was just nowhere catching, so I don't know like if he got a damage or he just couldn't handle the car for the last 5 laps, I don't know. But it was an amazing race and amazing fight as usual with Dalkin.
Indeed, and I think Dalkin, he's also here as well, of course, he can answer that for himself. I mean, another second place. Let's first of all focus on this race.
Honestly, if Jardier was in front of me, I'd have to strangle him right now. You know, he's so frustrating. But I was giving it everything. You know what Jardier is like. He's quick right to the end. But I just didn't have the grip. The last 5 laps, I was just struggling so hard with the rear of the car, and I just couldn't keep up with him. You know.
Yeah. Do you think it was tyre wear or tyre temperatures maybe?
Yeah, the muck eats fronts, and then I started getting understeer, and then obviously you're trying to push it in a little bit harder, and then I was getting the oversteer to just to help out with it, you know. But yeah, he just had a bit of better car today at the end of the race. So
yeah. Well, it was fun watching you guys battle at the end there. Always entertaining to see you guys go at it. Certainly when you're driving that fast as well, makes it even more special. So while Dalkin, you are the king of second places for this season, it has to be said. However, you have got the big first place. And of course with operators unfortunate issues, it has been confirmed. It has been a grind, but you are the Season 12 AOR PCT1 champion.
Yeah, nice. I want to give a big shout out. Yeah, thanks. I want to give a big shout out to Operator. I didn't really want to beat him this way, you know, but I know he had computer issues or game issues, you know, and he's been a great teammate. And the whole of THR have been great and all, you know, the whole way through the season. So I feel so bad, you know. So I know he would have been right there with us right till the end.
Yeah, it's certainly been some great fights between you guys throughout the season. Jardier as well, of course, getting involved in that. But yeah, I mean, until last week, it was always like less than 10 points between you and Operator for the championship. So yeah, it was certainly great fights. In the end, you are the man who was able to dethrone Jardier. In the end.
I reckon he'll come back next year with a vengeance, you know. But so
yeah.
It'll be another good fight and Operator, everyone.
Yeah, certainly.
I hope so. But this season is amazing with racing, so I think this season is probably the most amazing for me, at least. Like, I'm of course not winning or anything, but the races and the fights are just so amazing and pure fun, so I love it.
Yeah, good to hear. So then, we are now going to talk to Big Prenta, who has only done his 2nd race in the league, but already picking up a podium. How are you feeling about that one?
Yeah, man, I'm happy about it. 2nd race, P3. I didn't expect it, to be honest, but you know, I worked hard all week, put the effort in, put the practice in, and yeah, I got the result in the end. So yeah, I guess I'm happy with that.
Yeah, it was always going to be hard, I guess, to catch Jardier and Dalkin.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible. I mean, towards the end, I mean, they had so much pace, and I was pretty much giving it everything I had and stuff. So it wasn't enough, but hey, I got the result in the end. That's what counts, really.
Yeah, I mean, at parts of the race at least, it did look like you were able to keep up reasonably well on pace with them.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to consistency, man. There was a few times where, you know, I'd catch Jardier and then I'd brake late into hairpins, and it, you know, it cost you so much time, like 4 or 5 attempts a lap sometimes. But yeah, it was a good race overall, to be fair.
Yeah, and podium in your 2nd race, not bad at all. So I think we can say congrats on that one. Yeah, not too shabby indeed. So hopefully, yeah, still one race to go in the season. Hopefully, can be more of the same.
Yeah, of course.
Well, thanks for coming to speak to us, man, and we'll see you next week. So then, that's going to be it for the stream. It's been another good race, despite slightly depleted grid. Hopefully, we'll see a few more drivers being able to make the race next week, where we will have the season finale at Nürburgring in that postponed race from earlier in the season. And yeah, another good fight for the win, another good few fights throughout the field, and of course a championship crowned Yorkie. So it's been relatively historic race here at Kota.
Yeah, it's a little bit quiet in a couple of places, but there was obviously plenty of action for us to commentate on, and obviously a very nice, exciting finish. Congratulations to Dow King on picking up the Drivers' Championship as well, and obviously a big thanks to all the drivers who participate in the league. Also, thank you to all those who tuned into the live stream too, and have been supporting with the Apex Online Racing channel. And of course, thanks to you as well, Fizzy, for putting up with me each week too.
Yeah, it's not easy.
I thought so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a hell of a season. We've got one more round remaining, just the rerun of Nürburgring next week as well.
Indeed. Well, thanks to you as well, Yoki, for putting up with me. That might even be a harder task, I would imagine.
Nah, it's very easy, mate.
Cheers. And yeah, like Yoki said, thanks everyone who's been watching. Thanks to all the drivers, thanks to all the coordinators for making the league happen. And one race to go. The championship might be crowned up front. There's still a few championship battles, of course, that needs to be sorted out throughout the field as well. And first and foremost, let's hope for another exciting race at the Nürburgring. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Good night.